All right, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning or evening, wherever you might be coming in from. My name is Matt Cornwell, and today is our second session of our Grad Chat Series that we do in the fall semester for RIT Saunders College of Business. So I'm very excited to have Associate Professor Dr. Kevin Sweeney here today to talk about our Master of Science program in Global Supply Chain Management. So we're really excited to introduce that program to you all and have a solid discussion about what to expect with that program. Quickly, from a logistical standpoint, if you do have any questions, please I'm more than happy to have you unmute yourself. We actually would welcome that. And if you do want to turn on your camera, certainly welcome that as well. And then if you do have questions, feel free to put those in the chat too, if that's easier for you. But we're happy to address those. And then if anyone does need closed captioning, there is that option at the bottom of your Zoom screen. There's a captioning option that you can select if you do want to activate that stuff. But without further ado, I will turn it over to Kevin and we'll get started here.
Thank you, Matt. Before I go ahead and get started, I'd also like to give Rich a chance to introduce himself as our department chair and someone who may need to bounce here in a second. So I'll let him do that, and then I'll go ahead and get started.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rich DeJordi. I'm the department chair for the management department, which houses the supply chain program. And I'm just sort of here to listen. And like Kevin said, I may need to bounce. So if I leave, it's not because of anything that was said. It was just because something else interrupted me.
And I'm pretty sure that for the most part, with some exception, I can answer most of the questions that you would ask Rich, specifically when it comes to the program. There may be some broader overarching things you may be interested in that he would have more knowledge about than I would. But in general, you could use either of us as a resource going forward, both through this discussion and later on in the future if you have any more questions. So
He's
all right.
being very humble. He knows way more than I do. And what I don't, and what he doesn't know, Matt will know. I'm actually adding no value here whatsoever.
All right, let me go ahead and share my screen. I have a small PowerPoint presentation that's going to kind of structure this discussion, but I'm not necessarily going to be using it as a default guide for anything. I just figured that this would be nice to display some additional information. And I'm sure that if you would like to see this, that Matthew can make a piece of this available to you as necessary. So welcome. This is going to be a session that's discussing the MS in Global Supply Chain Management. This is a relatively new-ish program here at the Saunders College of Business. I think it's maybe been around for a little less than a decade, maybe like 5 to 10 years. I don't know exactly the timeline for that. I myself am brand new to RIT. I actually only started at RIT about a month and a half ago. So I'm excited to work with this program and to potentially welcome you all to campus for this program in the future if you find that it meets the needs that you have for your career goals. So the agenda for today is pretty simple. We've already kind of introduced ourselves. I would like to go ahead and then spend most of my time today talking about the program itself, and I'm going to do that within the context of RIT as a school and the Saunders College as a college of business. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the specifics of the supply chain management program, what you can expect in it, what type of job outcomes there are, the general classes that you kind of have to go through in order to do it, as well as how the global supply chain program here could fit into whatever career pathway that you have for yourself. And then we'll leave some time at the end for question and answers. As Matt had mentioned earlier, if you have any questions as we go through this, please stop me or write it in the chat. I'd love to have a dialogue with you in a conversation as we go through the presentation. You don't need to feel like you need to save your questions for the very end, unless you don't have any, in which case then maybe at the end something will come to mind. So the Saunders College of Business is an AACSB accredited institution. Only about the top 5% of business schools worldwide have this accreditation. It's a very important accreditation for employment prospects as well as for future graduate programs. It's basically the best business schools in the world share this accreditation across themselves. The Saunders College also had the first female dean in the College of Business in 1960, and currently the college has about 1,000 students, a little over 700 undergraduates and 300 graduate students, with 50% of the graduate students themselves being international students. So we have a very significant international presence, and we have many, many people from many different countries and places across the world that are members of our programs right now. Additionally, something that's very nice in terms of your potential job market prospects in the future is that the Saunders College has about 25,000 alumni, which means that there is a very significant network, both within the Rochester area in upstate New York, as well as nationally in the US and worldwide across the globe, that can help make connections for you so that you might have a easier chance getting jobs that you're looking for after completion of the program. The program itself, as well as the college in general, are very highly ranked. Rochester Institute of Technology just got ranked as a top 100 university in the nation. And the College of Business has programs that are ranked anywhere from in the top 10 worldwide all the way down to the top 100 worldwide across a variety of different programs. So the college is very, very well respected, and there is a lot of opportunity here to not only leverage this respect into positions, but also to enhance this respect yourself when you graduate from the programs here. Now, within the Saunders College, there's two different types of programs. There's the one we're going to be talking about today, that's the MS program, as well as what's known as an MBA program. The majority of both of these programs are classified as STEM. Specifically, this Global Supply Chain Management program is a STEM program. I know that for international students, being designated as a STEM program is very significant. I do want to spend a small amount of time talking about the difference between an MS program and an MBA program. An MS program is basically designed as a year-long program where you are getting a hyper concentration of a specific discipline within that year. The MBA program is a much more broad-based program where you're trying to basically get information and knowledge about a bunch of different functional areas of a business, all within a more traditional 2-year program. Whereas the MS program is going to be hyper fixated on your specific discipline. So the Global Supply Chain Management MS is going to be hyper fixated on content related to and useful to supply chain management. That doesn't necessarily mean that every class you take is going to be a supply chain class, but it does mean that all of the classes that you take are either going to be heavily rooted in supply chain theory or classes with techniques, mathematical data analysis things and stuff like that, that are going to be very useful for you when you get into your supply chain career eventually. So let's talk a little bit about the specifics of the program itself. The program itself is a 12-month program that requires 30 credits. In this program, you're going to get a whole bunch of skills and knowledge related to supply chain management, not only in design of supply chain systems, but also the ability to do things that are useful to supply chain managers, things like forecasting future trends, setting up supply chain networks, leveraging transportation, working in international import and export, managing relationships both with suppliers and with customers across the entire supply chain. All of these things are covered either in a specific class or covered as material across all of the classes within the supply chain curriculum in this master's program. Some of the courses that you can expect to take in this program include things like supply chain analysis. That's going to be an analytics course as well as kind of like a supply chain basics course. Global business analytics to give you a little bit more exposure to using analytics to solve problems in a global context, as well as export and global sourcing, which will help not only with discovering different facilitators for international trade, but also help you work with transportation and how to use different types of transportation or how to get different types of transportation to do different things for the businesses that you work for. The outcomes from the supply chain management program are very, very good. I know that as a college, we have what's known as a 95% outcomes rate. I think Matt can probably give a little bit more insight into what that means specifically. But I know for the supply chain management program, we have very, very good placements of our students when they graduate from the program. I just received some data from one of the people that works within the College of Business about these placements a couple of weeks ago. And from what I saw, all of our MS program graduates are getting jobs in supply chain management with pretty good salaries, ranging somewhere between 70 and 90,000 base salaries, US dollars to start, with companies that are both very well known across the globe, companies like Amazon, as well as companies that are more local to like Rochester, places like the Medical Center, Rochester Regional Health, as well as companies like Wegmans. All of these companies, which is a grocery store, sorry for not giving you that context. So all of these companies come here and hire our supply chain management MS program graduates. And we have a fair number that stay in the United States, as well as a fair number that go back to their home countries if they're international students and find employment there. So I'll let Matt now, if he doesn't mind, talk a little bit more about the general outcomes of the programs here, and then I'll move on to some of the employers we interact with on a regular basis.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Kevin. So the 95%, and just taking a step back for a second on outcomes rates on the whole, this is a very important figure when you're considering options. You want to be able to consider this data when you're thinking about grad school options on the whole. So this figure is measuring within 3 to 6 months of graduation, how many students have a job in their discipline or are studying for an advanced degree. So that's overarching. The 95% outcomes rate is applicable to our population on the whole, both on the graduate, undergraduate side. It can vary slightly from program to program, but the number is pretty consistent. As Kevin alluded to, our students are getting jobs all over the place. They're national organizations, local organizations, and companies. So the job prospects are not limited by any stretch. And again, our co-op program on the whole, although you're not required to do a co-op at the graduate level, it has a big impact on this figure and your ability to secure employment. So we are able to build those networks, and our alumni base is so strong, as Kevin mentioned, that it's a huge, huge aspect to what we do well at RIT and why students are so successful once they complete the program. But if you do have any questions specifically regarding outcomes, we can get that for you. So just let us know. And if you have questions related to specific companies, you want to connect with someone from a specific company or organization, we more times than not, we're going to be able to find that connection and be able to build that out for you.
Another thing that should be noted when it comes to the placement outcomes rate that he mentioned, specifically when it comes to studying for advanced degrees, if you find yourself really resonating with supply chain management and might be interested in continuing your education afterwards to go do something like get a PhD in something like supply chain or in management, going through an MS program is one of the ways to springboard your way to that potential career pathway. I know that I personally did not do that, but many of the different faculty members that I know at RIT and many of my fellow PhD cohort students when I was at the University of Maryland got their master's degree through an MS program before transferring from that MS program into a PhD program. And a place like RIT would definitely make you competitive for some of the larger PhD programs, both in this country and potentially outside of this country, depending on what your overall goals might be. And even if that's something you may want to do later on in life, having an MS degree is something that will really help make you stand out when it comes to looking to get involved in PhD programs potentially in the future. So just to kind of continue on a little bit in terms of outcomes, there are a lot of employers that come to campus. We have a lot of different companies that are involved in RIT for a lot of different reasons. The co-op program, which is more designed for the undergraduates, but something that graduate students can take advantage of if they want to, is something that really brings hundreds of employers to campus. And those employers work in all sorts of different disciplines. But one of the things that's very nice about supply chain management is that there are very, very few businesses on planet Earth that do not leverage supply chains in some capacity. Even if you are a service firm, you have needs or things you have to do with a supply chain. And so the growth potential for this specific discipline is extraordinarily high. You combine that with the fact that our undergraduate program and graduate program have some student organizations that do a whole lot of community outreach, going for things like site visits and bringing local companies and sometimes national companies to campus to give lectures or other things like that. It means that we have a lot of people who will be coming to campus or that you'll be able to travel to away from campus that will get you exposure to different types of companies, different types of roles, and get you a leg up in terms of finding jobs. I know that a lot of companies tend to prefer to hire people that they know or that they've seen before. And by being a part of a program like this, where we are making a concentrated effort to get the students both at the undergraduate and graduate level out there, it makes a big difference in terms of your future employment prospects. So here's some of the lists of some of the companies that RIT grads have been hired at in the past. Of course, you see some very recognizable brands here like Apple, General Electric, BMW, but there's also some things that are a little bit more local. You have Wegmans, which is the largest local grocery store. They use a lot of supply chain talent. You have Rochester Regional Health, which is a big firm here that is focused on healthcare that uses a lot of supply chain talent. And then you have some things that you may not necessarily expect, like Disney or L3 Harris, which is a defense contractor, or PricewaterhouseCooper, which would be a consulting agency for supply chain. So there's really a lot of different ways that you could go with this degree once you finally receive it. Now, I know that RIT itself has some specific scholarship programs. Matt, do you know if there are any specific scholarship programs for MS students, or do they have to go through like a general scholarship program like other students do?
So the all of our graduate business students are considered for scholarships. So it's a very similar process. That scholarship range at the top of the slide there is what, generally speaking, our students are seeing from a scholarship standpoint. These other scholarships are specific typically to RIT graduates and then some of our +1 partners. But the average award is about 30% typically. But if your merits warrant it, we will absolutely consider scholarships that go to 40 and 50%. So be mindful of that. For our international students, most of you will likely have to take the GMAT or the GRE and the TOEFL or IELTS. So those scores and exams are a big part of the process and can be a very strong indicator of a strong scholarship award. But absolutely, there is scholarship opportunities for all of our graduate students, including MS students.
Okay. It's also a pretty exciting time to come to Saunders specifically. We just opened a new wing of the College of Business building. I have had a chance to experience it myself after just getting here a few months ago. It is a gorgeous wing. There's a lot of really cool things that have been added to the building as a result of this. We have some very interesting and cool and unique study spaces, as well as some case rooms and a bunch of other things that bring what RIT has as facilities into a more modern College of Business setting. So it's a very exciting time to come here specifically to RIT because there's a lot of new stuff happening. The rankings of the institution have been increasing at a pretty meteoric rate over the last 5 to 10 years. And overall, it's a good place to come set up and establish yourself and learn a lot about supply chain management as a discipline, and then leverage that learning into really good career prospects. So for those of you in here that are not maybe particularly well acquainted with supply chain as a discipline, supply chain is basically the nuts and bolts of doing business, the day-to-day analysis of how you should get product, where you should get it from, and a whole bunch of other things that have to be done on a daily basis just for business to function. A lot of other roles that you're familiar with in businesses like finance and accounting and marketing tend to be a lot more overarchingly strategic in nature. Supply chain is one of those disciplines where if you really like to roll up your sleeves and kind of get your hands dirty with actual like daily business problems and come up with quick solutions to them, then supply chain is definitely the discipline for you. And it's growing all across the world. Every major firm or every company. Ooh, there's somebody here. Midris, do you want to go ahead and let them in? Yep. So every major company within the world now operates a supply chain division, and there's tons of opportunities for consulting or other things in the discipline. It's growing at a humongous rate all across the world. So it's a good time to get in and get your feet wet and get really into supply chain management for outside opportunities. So that's a decent amount about the program. If any of you have questions about some of the specifics in terms of the coursework or the expected pathways through it, we can talk about that. But otherwise, I just kind of like to open up the floor to any questions, thoughts, or topics that you all would potentially like to discuss when you're considering this program here at RIT. Yes, Isaac.
Yes, my question is with regards to the GMAT and GRE, do you offer any waiver? Because some people might not be geographically might not have access to the GRE or GMAT waiver.
Yeah, so the only way that we waive the exam is if you have studied and received a degree in the US. Otherwise, you'll have to take the exam for admission consideration. And that goes
Do you offer
go ahead.
Do you offer application fee waiver?
Again, generally no. If it's a significant barrier, we can have a discussion, but our fee is generally quite a bit lower than other schools that you'll come across, especially business schools. You know, we're $65 US for our fee, whereas a lot of other business schools are as high as 200. So yeah, so typically no, but it's a conversation we can have if we need to, but generally we don't waive it.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Isaac. Does anyone else have any questions or anything else that they'd like to discuss about the RIT program? Ooh, there's some things in chat. Oh. All right. Thank you, Cassie. All right. So I guess that there's no questions. I realized that I kind of went over a large kind of like bird's eye view of everything. In terms of the specific course load and things like that, there's a pretty prescribed pathway that students go through the program. They have a set number of classes that they have to take. They have some classes that are required. There are, of course, some electives. But in general, most students in the program will form what's known as a cohort, where you're all going through a similar set of classes together with a little bit of variation based on what electives you want to focus on. I know that within supply chain specifically, some of the electives that tend to be the most prized are electives in management information systems or accounting, because those definitely overlap quite a bit with a lot of the roles that people in supply chain have. But there's a lot of different personalized pathways that you could take through those electives to potentially massage your degree a little bit on the margins to get it more aligned with some specific interests that you might have. We're also in some preliminary discussions with some other colleges across campus where we might potentially be able to leverage a course or two in something like sustainability as part of those electives to kind of tailor your degree more in a sustainability direction, though those talks have not resulted in anything official yet and are still ongoing at higher levels at the university.
Kevin, can you just pull down
if that's it,
and I'll share the curriculum really quickly.
Oh yeah, sure. Let me go ahead and close and stop sharing this so you can share the curriculum real quick. That's a good idea.
All right. I got to do it one more time. Okay, can you guys see that? Is it working?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so this is the breakdown of the curriculum. I'll put this link in the chat as well, but it's very nice. Again, you can go in here, pull down and toggle down with the course descriptions, and then it gives you a good robust listing of the various electives as well. And then there are some faculty profiles too. I know a lot of particularly our international students, I know a lot of you like to kind of review faculty, check out their research, and then see what some of the work they've done has been. So keep that in mind. And then you can also check out some of the featured profiles. So Sparsh was, he's actually a recent global supply chain management graduate. So you can certainly view some information regarding his background. and just get a sense for some of that stuff as well. Thomas too was a graduate a few years back.
Mhm.
So yeah, a lot of good information here that you can check out and just reference as you consider options. But again, any questions that you have, we're certainly happy to address those.
And just so you all know, I did not show up in that picture, in that set of pictures there, because I'm so new that they don't have a photo of me yet. I'm still getting my official portrait done through the university. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks or months, I'll be up there as part of that faculty program. So yeah, it's a good program. It's a small program. The cohort is very tight. And there's a lot of chances to interact with the rest of the supply chain program here in terms of case competitions with the undergraduates and traveling with the students to site visits and things like that. So it's a really good program, and we're working on growing it pretty extensively. So if there's any other questions, I'll take them. Otherwise, I think that's basically all I wanted to get through today.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate your time. Again, if you folks have any questions, obviously regarding curriculum or anything like that, I put my email in the chat, so feel free to reach out, and I can connect you with Kevin, and we're happy to address any of that stuff. And then any questions, again, regarding application content, those types of things, let us know, and we're happy to help there. But yeah, if there's okay, so Sandish asks, does low GMAT score affect application? So we don't have a hard score for the GMAT or the GRE. Like, we like to see scores around the 50th percentile, but we certainly don't just remove an application because of a low GMAT or GRE score. So it's a factor, but we want to take a look at, obviously, your TOEFL or IELTS. That's important, very important from a language standpoint. Especially just within business, obviously, to have those skills. So that's a variable. You're also going to complete a personal statement, which I want to stress very much that we want that to come from you. We do not want to see an AI or Chat GPT generated personal statement. So, we want to see content from you. We want to get to know you a little bit. And that's one way that we can do that is that written sample. And then obviously another big variable is your academic performance. So, if you've been in school recently, we're going to review your transcripts, your academic, quality from that perspective. And then obviously if you have some work experience, great. It's not a requirement to have any, but if you do have some, that's a variable as well. So, I'm not going to say if you completely bomb the exam, that's not going to have a significant impact, because it will, but if you score, in the 40th percentile or something like that, or even 35th, we're not going to just throw out your application because of that. So we're still going to look at it, review it. And if you do really want to be here, we may give you another chance to take the exam, or we might set up an interview or something like that. So, folks hear that we require that, but there's a lot more to it than just that exam, right? We're looking at things holistically. But yeah, no, that's a good question. Yeah, any other questions that folks have?
Okay. I think we've probably got everything taken care of. So thank you so much for joining us. It was really nice to get an opportunity to talk about this program with you, and I hope that you decide that this program is something that you might be interested in, and that you submit an application, and decide to be a part of this program and its family going forward.
All right, thank you everyone. Have a good day, and we'll be in touch going forward.